What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway, which has been one of the best tracks in the next-gen era, and it's been a great track for Toyota as well. This will take place on Sunday, Cinco de Mayo, around 3 p.m. Eastern, and the weather is looking fine this weekend at Kansas. I know tornadoes have been ripping through the middle parts of the United States, but we got lucky, and it looks like we're gonna have clear skies for racing on Sunday. And really quick, I gotta give a shout out to last week's comment contest winner, Charles Miller 312, who gets Denny Hamlin at 127 laps. I think he led 136, and he was the closest just by one compared to somebody else. So it's a game of inches out there. But if you want to enter this week's comment contest, we're gonna run it back. Just tell me who you think is going to lead the most laps and how many, and the winner will get a cash prize. But anyway, if this happens to be your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturdays, live streams on Sundays. And I plan on being live around 1 p.m. Eastern, so come in, say hi. Always a good time. If you do enjoy today's content, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's dive right into it. All right, so let's talk some strategy here for Kansas. 1.5 mile track, 267 laps, which is what, like 185-ish Dominator points available to us. So you're pretty much looking at 2 Dom builds this weekend. You're not at Dover, you're not at Martinsville, you're not at Bristol where there's 400, 500 laps. So it's not that many Dominator points to go around, but you're going to want at least 2 per build for the most part. Now, I am recording this before practice and qualifying, so I don't know what the grid looks like yet, so it might be a little bit wonky depending on what happens. Not really sure, but either way, we're going to want at least 1 lap there in the majority of our lineup. And I don't mean to beat the dead horse, because I say it every single time we're at a 1.5 mile track, but it's the same faces up front pretty much every single time. You can almost guarantee it's going to be some combination of either Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick. That's pretty much your big 4. And if we're looking at the other 1.5s we've been at this year, Las Vegas and Texas, who did we see up front? We saw Kyle Larson up front. We saw Denny Hamlin. We saw Tyler Reddick at all 3 tracks. And then you also saw guys like Martin Truex Jr. Bubba Wallace is another name that I wouldn't be surprised if I see poke his nose towards the front this weekend. Also, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, kind of in those second and third tiers of guys that sometimes make their way towards the front at these types of tracks. But for the most part, I fully expect either Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, or Kyle Larson to make some noise. And finally, moving on to the driver breakdown, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, link is down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. You get access into my entire NASCAR model, which is all color-coded, very easy to follow, nice and neat. Access to the projections for both sites, my optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheets, my articles going over cash games, tournaments, and my favorite bets this weekend. Also the entire betting model, which I don't think I can continue at this pace. We are currently at a 90% ROI. We were at around 60% last year. So things are going well. I don't think it can continue at that pace, but the good times have been rolling, so hopefully we can keep them going so far this season. So if you want access to any of that, you know where to find it. Link is down below. I do cover baseball every single day, and I also post projections for the Xfinity and Truck Series, as well into the optimizer too. And as you all know, I'm a partner of Stochastic, and they did launch their NASCAR Sims tool. If you want to check it out, you can upload my projections to it, use their set ones on the site, or upload your custom ones, and then load up the pre-contest simulator to see which lineups stack up the best in tournaments, or which drivers have the best ROI before the race happens. So if you want to check it all out and use it on race days, just use the link down below in the description and tell them I sent you. All right, so practice and qualifying just now ended, so just put the order in. We're gonna go through this together for the first time, run through the entire slate. My first initial reactions of the entire grid here, and the more polished stuff will be on the Patreon later tonight, and then the live stream tomorrow afternoon. And I know I kind of mentioned, as long as it's not wonky for qualifying, well, guess what? There's a lot of guys that have big names that did not qualify that well. So gonna make for another interesting slate once again. And I kind of talked about the big 4. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, William Byron. I said these guys are probably going to be the ones that show the most speed. And if we head over to practice, well, guess who were the fastest cars in practice? You have just overall lap times from 1 lap through like the 30 lap runs. Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson. No surprise there whatsoever. So pretty much who we think is going to be fast is going to be the race winning contender, like we presumed. All right, so let's start with the 5-figure range. And a lot of these guys are going to be viable. I know I say that every single week, but there's a reason they're expensive. We're going to have to mix and match them for the most part. We're probably only going to be able to get to 2 at the very least. Again, like I said, I'm not in projections or anything like that, so I'm not 100% sure what roster construction is going to look like here. Not really seeing too many standout plays, just eyeballing it, but I'm sure we'll find somebody. But we'll start with Denny Hamlin on top. He's starting in 14th. Honestly, I feel like we can kind of put these guys in groups like we did last week, so it makes it a little bit easier to talk about, because I don't want to spend 10 minutes telling you guys that all the expensive guys are good plays, because I think that's fairly obvious. So let's put them in groups here. I think Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, and Martin Truex Jr. are pretty much the same plays based off the starting positions. They're all right next to each other, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Then we have Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson. They're starting in the top 5, and those are your potential early dominators right there. Two guys that are no strangers to being able to lead laps during races, especially Kyle Larson. And then William Byron's kind of in his own range because he is starting pretty much in the very back. He ended up scrubbing the wall in qualifying and somehow was still quicker than Derek Kraus, who is just extremely slow this week, kind of embarrassing. So he is going to be the easy chalk place differential play that you are 100% getting to in cash games, and he's obviously going to be a staple in tournaments too because you're getting one of the best cars based off of practice and based on what we've seen at intermediate tracks in the next gen era, starting in the very back. So I don't really see a reason to not like William Byron. If it's cash games, 100% locking in. In tournaments, I'm still going to have a large chunk of him because I can play William Byron in addition to other guys starting close to the front. So it's not like you're completely sacrificing dominator points. Now, if you are playing William Byron, I still think you're going to need somebody close to the front. I don't think you go strictly place differential. But at the same time, Denny Hamlin, Reddick, Martin Truex Jr., these guys can lead laps in this race. They can be dominators, and they're not starting up front, but they could still be lap leaders. So it's not like you have to strictly place someone in the very front with William Byron. Really, you could just mix and match two of these guys, or at least one of these guys with Byron, and I think that's perfectly fine. So looking at the practice times, I would say Kyle Larson is probably going to be the most dominant car in this race. He dominated Texas until the wheel fell off, and he absolutely demolished Las Vegas. I know he's a little bit slower in the 1 lap in practice, 4th in the 5 lap, and then 2nd in the 10, and then 1st in the 15. Hamlin's been good everywhere this year. He's going to be a threat starting in 14th, top 5 numbers across the board in practice. Also won here last year. Him and Kyle Larson were going at it at the very end, and Hamlin, I guess, ended up turning him into the wall. And then Martin Truex Jr., slower in the 1 lap, but then got stronger in the log run, which is kind of a common thing we have seen in practice for him this year. And it's been no stranger for him to get close to the front, if not leading laps this year at the intermediate race. If we look at the sample size for the data set that I'm looking at this week. So first one's going to be the Kansas Next Gen numbers plus the 2024 1.5 mile tracks. Then we have the 10 race sample size of intermediates since 2023. And then we have the 2023-2024 season combined here. So if we're looking at the first data set, as you can see, the most dominant car by far has been Kyle Larson, the most laps led and the most fast laps. And then Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin right there behind him in terms of fast laps. Laps led has been clearly Kyle Larson, though. So those are probably going to be your 3 top dogs in this race. And then all these other guys kind of get sprinkled in for the most part, but I'd have a hard time seeing these top 4 not be the guys that I build around. And I'll probably have about 2 per lineup. If I could get to 3, great, but I'm not sure since there's only 267 laps in this race compared to like 400, 500, where I don't think that's going to be necessary. Christopher Bell is not someone I'm going to have a ton of interest in starting on the pole. I think he's going to be good. Will he be a top 10 contender? Absolutely. Top 5? Sure. Do I think he's going to be the best car in the field? I do not. Starting in the pole, it's $10,000. There's a lot of downside there, especially when you have Kyle Larson starting in the row right behind him, and I would not be surprised at all if Kyle Larson ends up jumping him pretty early on. So don't really see myself getting to much Christopher Bell, so he'd kind of be the one guy that I'm not getting to make it easier to get to the other 4 or 5 drivers in this range. And on FanDuel, I really don't see a reason to play him because you basically need him to win the race, and I just don't think that's the most likely scenario. Then dropping out of the 9K range, other than Bubba Wallace, or really, I guess even Bubba Wallace because of the price point, especially for trying to mix and match these guys in the 10K range, it'll be hard to get to really any of these guys. Elliott, he's been getting much better as the season has progressed. The price has came up, though, unfortunately. He's nearly $10,000. And I feel like this is kind of where he's going to run the majority of the race. He'd probably be like a 5th to 10th place car. I need dominator points out of him at this price point because the other guys above him can offer that. And while he's been fine in the data set that I'm looking at, he's been strong this year, I just don't see myself being able to spend that much for Chase Elliott. Bubba Wallace, $9,500. If I am playing anybody in this 9K range, he was going to be the guy that I most likely get to, I would say, starting in 23rd. 2311 and just Toyota in general has been extremely strong at this track. And speaking of that, I do have a couple guys that I did bet on in this 8th to 9K range. So I guess since you guys always want to know, these are the bets that I have early in the week. And they're kind of all just sprinkles. I have Ryan Blaney at plus 2,200 and Ross Chastain at plus 2,200 to win the race. Put 0.4 units on that, I believe, or 0.2 units. I think it was 0.2 units each on that one. And then I bet them both top 5 at plus 300 for 0.4 units. That's what it was. And then I also have 2311 Racing to win the race at plus 500. Thought that was a really good number on Hard Rock. That's how other places have that around 3. So those are the bets that I have right now. I'm not sure how those odds are going to look afterwards. Obviously, Ryan Blaney didn't qualify very well, so I don't really feel too strong about that. Didn't practice very good either, so that might just be a torn up ticket right there. But Ross Chastain does give me some hope, qualifying well, and practice wasn't amazing either, but it was at least better than Ryan Blaney. So we'll see how those go. But I do feel pretty good about these 2311 cars. These are not the most current up-to-date odds, so we might have some nice post-qualifying bets based off of some of these guys qualifying a little bit worse, but I'm not really sure it's going to make too much of a difference. But I'll let you guys know in the live stream tomorrow. All right, so Bubba Wallace, I do like him a lot, starting in 23rd. Like, if I was to play anybody in this 9K range, I think he's the easiest to get to. Top 10 across the board in practice, and any single time around 1.5, or Kansas specifically, Bubba Wallace is going to be on my radar. Ty Gibbs starting in 6. Like, I think he's got the speed for it. 6 in the 10 lap, 6 in the 15, 3rd in the 20. I just don't think there's much room to move up. He could be a second tier type of dominator play, so you throw him in the dominator pool, but I don't really see myself getting a ton of that. I think he runs very well, though. It's just mainly a starting position and price thing. So if you're playing 20 max, 150 max, that's when they start to filter in your lineups. And the same thing I said for Ty Gibbs can apply to Ross Chastain here, although with him starting in second compared to 6th, I feel like it'd be a little bit easier to get to Ty Gibbs. But over on FanDuel, you are getting a $2,000 discount, so I might filter into a little bit more lineups over there. Drop into the 8K range. Kyle Busch, kind of what I said for Ross Chastain and Ty Gibbs, I guess can be applied here. Looks like he's going to be a top 8, top 10 car, which is perfectly fine. But $8,900, I need a guy that can steal some fast laps and potentially get up front, which is not out of the question for Kyle Busch. But again, probably not the most likely scenario. So I'd throw him right in there with Ross and Ty Gibbs. Ryan Blaney, $8,600. He's going to be starting in 26. And while he didn't practice that well, I believe he ended up scrubbing the wall a little bit in qualifying. I didn't have the audio on, but I feel like they kind of zoomed into his car, and I saw some scrapers there in the rear. But other than that, he has ran well at Kansas in the next gen. We're looking at a 6 race sample size and a couple of 1.5s this year, running position of 10.4, 4 top 15s, 5 top 20s, and if we're looking at the 10 race sample size here, kind of similar numbers overall. So I think Blaney will be able to improve upon this. So I would say he's in that cash game consideration starting in 26, only $8,600. I think it's pretty unlikely he's fringe top 20 car in this race. So I do like him in a cash game format. You don't have to play him. There's other plays, obviously, but he's going to be viable and project well at this price point. Joey Logano starting 11th. I don't see any reason to play Joey. 32nd, 28th, 25th in practice. Got a little bit better, but if he's going to even just be a fringe top 15 car starting at 11th, I don't really see any upside. Just going to be Ryan Blaney all day between those two. Alex Bowman didn't give us a 10-lap run in practice, which I don't love. He's starting in 18th. He's a cheap Hendrick car, and I can't imagine they're going to be terrible in this race. So I would say I prefer him more than Joey Logano, but I'd still rather get to Blaney over Bowman between those two, or really, I guess, between those 3. 7K range, Brad Keselowski starting in 30th. Like, see, I prefer Brad over guys like Bowman and Joey, so I just don't really see too much reason to get there. I think Brad will be a fine cash game play on this slate. Do I think he's going to be insanely fast? No, I do not. Practice was not bad, though. Usually Brad has these practices where he's 30th in the 5 lap, 30th in the 10, and you're just like, well, he's an old man. He'll figure it out as the race goes on. They always find their way to an ugly top 15. Well, at least they showed some speed in practice. Top 15 across the board, 10th in the 15, 9th in the 20, which I realize not many guys ran those, but 10th in the 15 made me feel at least halfway decent. So if he's going to be a top 20, top 15, if he lands for anywhere from 15th to 20th, we will take that at that price point. So there's another guy that I think is fine for cash games this weekend, and on FanDuel at that price point, going to be a guy that I filter into my lineups is probably like a last fit type of guy. Because if we're looking at the sample size for him, he just kind of finds his way around 15th place for the most part. 4 top 15s, 5 top 20s, 10 race sample size here, running position of 13th, average finish of 12th, and just usually hanging around 10th to 20th. So we will take that. I believe it was Texas where he finished second. Was he a second place car? Absolutely not. Started the race off awful, but ended up getting a little bit better as the day progressed and got lucky with some late cautions as well. Chris Buescher will probably run similar to Keselowski at the end of the day. The problem is he is starting 18 spots further up, and they showed similar speed in practice, so just going to be Brad Keselowski. Noah Gragson, he's been impressive, not going to lie. Did not see the high finish last week, although kind of got a little bit lucky with the late caution, but he's still been running just fine this year. 3rd in qualifying and fast in practice too. Like if he was starting outside of the top 10, I would say he's in a tournament play because he showed some decent speed. Looking at the practice chart here, 10, 12, 8, 6, and 5th. The problem is just with that starting position, he falls back at all, it's just probably going to be an ugly day because I can't see him being a guy that steals fast laps periodically throughout the day. And there's a lot of good cars that have to move their way through the field. And I don't think Gragson's going to be able to hold them off over the course of 3 stages. Daniel Suarez is a guy that if you need some cheaper place differential upside, you can go with it there. Trackhouse cars tend to bring a little bit of juice at these intermediate tracks. I just wish I saw more in practice out of him. 22nd, 23rd, and 21st in the 5 through 15 lap runs. Typically finds his way around 15th place at these tracks. I mean, Daniel Suarez is fine. 10 race sample size since 2023. I just finished at 12th, 20 position of 16th. Like, he should be able to move up. I just wish he showed a little bit more speed in practice. Chase Briscoe starting too high for me. Not going to have a ton of interest there. Practice around 18th to 10th, I guess. Probably move back a little bit, but at his price point, I need guys that are going to be able to move up or hold ground. I don't really see him holding ground as a super likely scenario. Like if he finishes 13th, that's a decent day for Briscoe, but I don't think it's going to be enough to be good for DFS. Josh Berry practiced a little bit quicker than where he ran in practice. If I had to pick between the two, I think Berry's probably the more likely choice, just showing a little bit more speed in practice. Michael McDowell, Austin Cindric, just really can't see myself getting there. Too high of a starting spot for me. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was running extremely well at Dover last week until he ended up wrecking out. 7th, 15th, 20th, 16th in practice. Should be like a 18th to 20th place car. I know it's a small range, maybe 15th, 20th place, right around there. Like, I don't think we're going to have a lot of great 5 to 6K plays just doing the eyeball test here. So I'm not going to write off Stenhouse just because he might be able to get you a top 20, and that's good enough. Austin Dillon slow, probably out-qualified himself a little bit. He's been so bad this year. Don't really see a reason to go there. Ryan Preece, I feel like that's probably where people will go because he's starting in 32nd. He's cheaper than all the other SHR cars, but man, he was extremely slow in practice and also burned a lot of people last week as his door burn up. Unfortunately, it wasn't really his fault, but like, yeah, it's nice because he's starting 32nd, but man, I'm just not really sure how much he's going to be able to move up because he's just slow across the board. Carson Hocevar showed a little bit more life, kind of his typical spot where he's in the low 20s or higher teens and kind of practice around there, just kind of hoping he holds his ground, which I think he is capable of doing. So he's a similar play to Stenhouse, in my opinion. And if we're looking at the sample size for him, I don't think that's out of the question. Average finished 15th in the 3 sample size, average running position around 18th, and 3 top 20s. So yeah, I'm fine with Hocevar here. Joey Johnson, just straight dead in practice, ended up finding some speed in qualifying, but I just can't trust Jimmy to play him. John Nemechek, same car as Jimmy pretty much, and just a little bit quicker. Like, he offers more PD, so if I had to pick between those two guys, I am playing John Hunter. And then Corey Heim. Again, just all the legacy cars are stacked up here. Him and John Hunter ran in pretty much the same times in practice, but Hunter starts 9 spots further back, so I'll just take John Hunter there. Austin Hill might be one of the 5K guys we can get to starting in 34th, 30th, 30th, 27th in practice, 19th into 15th, which is quicker than guys like Ryan Preece, Jimmy Johnson, and John Nemechek. So I think Austin Hill is playable back here. Corey LaJoie, based off of practice, looks playable starting in 28th. I really don't think the slate's going to matter too much on these guys. It's just going to be a matter of nailing these guys, and you just kind of throw these in at the end and hope they finish the race for the most part. Zane Smith, we thank him for his heroics last week, getting into the top 25. I believe that's what it was. Fine day for DFS, but now starting in 24th compared to 37th. Don't really think we can play him in DFS, unfortunately. I refuse to play Daniel Hemrick. Yes, if you played Hemrick last week, you lucked out. I played absolutely no Daniel Hemrick because why would I? He sucked during the race. Barely a top 20 car, which for where he was starting, definitely was not worth it. Ends up getting lucky on the caution and finishes in the top 10. So that'll probably never happen again. So congrats if you played him last week, but definitely lucked out there. Harrison Burton, never. Riley Herbst, I like him in the Xfinity Series, but not looking too hot in this Rick Ware machine this weekend. Very slow. Todd Gilliland, probably close to where he's starting finish-wise. The thing is, though, $5,200. He starts 25th and finishes 26th. I mean, honestly, better than some of these guys that are going to finish in the 30s. Haley, probably move up a little bit. Showed a little bit of life in practice, which I like to see. Derek Kraus, I cannot do. Looks like he's going to be the slowest car on the track. William Byron hit the wall in qualifying and still qualified him, which I guess I didn't see Kraus's qualifying lap. Maybe he did hit something, but I don't think he did. He's just really slow, so I will pass. With that being said, that's all I got for today's video. So if you enjoyed, or even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Make sure to leave a comment down below which driver you think is going to lead the most laps and how many, and the winner will get a cash prize. Check out all the extra content over on Patreon if you want. Hopefully I'll see you all in the live stream tomorrow afternoon around 1 p.m. Eastern. But I wish you the best. I'll see you all next time.